Hello, everyone. Welcome to this program. Um, Thank you so much for joining in us today, the International Relations Council, for today's International Career Series, Teaching Abroad in China, teaching English abroad in China. Um, as you may know, the International Career Series is designed to help you explore the different international career paths, whether you're graduating, entering the job market, looking for a change, or you're just curious. My name is Camila Mican, and I'm joined today by another fellow intern, Danielle Doan. Donald, sorry. And we are, as I said before, global education interns here at the IRC. For those unfamiliar with the IRC is a nonpartisan, apolitical organization that provides a platform for the greater understanding of international topics and how they intersect with the Kansas City community. We will be recording today's event and broadcasting it live on Facebook. So if you'd like to review this conversation at a later date or share it with someone you think may enjoy it, please feel free to visit our YouTube or Facebook page. Um, yeah, today we are pleased to be joined by Rebecca Kastendick. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Kastendick, but it's
Kastendick,
fine.
yeah, by Rebecca.
I,
Will talk to us about her experience, and it is safe to say that Rebecca has fully engaged in the international experience. And we thank you, Rebecca, so much for joining us today and giving us some of your time. Before starting, I want to say that for this event, please feel free to pose your questions through the chat box feature at the bottom of your screen throughout the program, and Danielle would be monitoring those, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can during the Q&A portion of today's event. If you'd like to connect with us at the IRC, please feel free to log onto our website, irckc.org, which is now available and it's brand new. So we would love for you to visit. And we encourage you to check out our calendar of events and joining us as a member, receiving the newsletter, or reaching out to us in whatever possible you can or want. So without further ado, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca, and the floor is yours.
okay. Well, um, I'll share mine. Um, so thank you very much. I don't get here. Huh. Well, this is why I have contingency plans, because for some reason it's not sharing. It didn't, is it sharing now?
I'm seeing your PowerPoint presentation.
I just see the black part. Oh, there we go. Got it. Okay, you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, great, thank you. Okay, so 大家好，我叫柯贝奇。2017和2019年我在中国教英文。So in English, hello everyone. My name is Rebecca Kastendick, and I am currently teaching English to non-native speakers of English at Johnson County Community College. I have a master's degree in English, and it has a specialization with teaching English as a second language. And I have taught at universities, colleges, and community programs in Kansas and in Iowa. I've been teaching for over 20 years, so it's been a long time. Today, I'd like to tell you about a couple of my experiences teaching in China. I taught in Xian for a semester in 2017, and then I taught in Taiyuan for a couple of weeks in the summer of 2019. So before I tell you about those experiences, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and how I got interested in teaching English to non-native speakers of English. And I go all the way back to when I was a little girl. My dad traveled a lot to countries all over the world. And when he would come home, he would bring me a doll from those countries. And I remember looking at those dolls and looking at what they were wearing and imagining the places that they represented. And I was fascinated. As I got older, I studied Spanish in high school and college, and I really enjoyed language and expressing ideas. I'm not very good, and I'm not fluent in Spanish, but it was fun to uh, be able to say some things in another language and communicate ideas to people who didn't understand English. I thought that was really fun. But when I went to college in the early 80s, I did not realize that teaching English as a second language was a career. And so I was in the College of Business, and I graduated with a degree in finance. But my junior year, I took a linguistics class, and suddenly things clicked. I thought, this is what I really want to do. But it was my junior year of college. So I graduated and worked for a couple years and then went back to graduate school to get my master's in English. And at the time, I thought I would teach overseas after I graduated. But my dream was put on hold for a few years as I was married and had children. But in 2017, I finally got the opportunity to teach overseas. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I prepared and how I got to Xian, and then I'll tell you about Xian and my teaching experiences there and in Taiwan. So to prepare,
May I
oh,
interrupt you for a second?
yes,
Sorry. We're able to see your screen, but we
uh,
only see your first slide.
oddness. Okay, let me, yeah, I don't, that's a funny thing because it wasn't looking right. Um, oh, you're over on that screen. I see. I have two screens and I thought you were on the first screen. So um, let me go. Oh, that's interesting that it went over there. Sorry, I practiced this and I thought it was going to be. Uh, so here are my dolls. You didn't see my dolls, right? You see them now?
We can see them now. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you. It should
No,
have
you're
interrupted
totally
me
fine.
sooner. Okay. I was just going away. Okay. Those are my dolls. And then preparation. So let me get back to how I got to Xi'an. JCCC has had a several-year relationship with Xibei Gongye Dashi, which is Northwestern Polytechnical University in China, in Xi'an. And several professors have come to JCCC from this school to teach Chinese and to teach English. And in 2016, there was another professor from the English department who went there to teach. And then I thought that sounded like a really fun idea. So in 2017, I asked if I could go, and I was accepted to do that as well. And JCCC also has a study abroad program for students, um, and so students can go and study Chinese at NPU. And so I had the really special experience of going to China with my youngest daughter. She had graduated from high school and she took a gap semester before she went to K-State and studied Chinese at NPU while I taught English. So that was really special. Um, so other preparation that I needed to do, besides asking if I could go teach, I had to do a lot of little legal things that, well, maybe they weren't so little, but first of all, I had to renew my passport because it had expired. But then I had to produce original degree diplomas for my undergraduate and graduate and my original birth certificate. And those had to be certified by the state Secretary of State in the state they were issued. So I graduated from Iowa State University, so I had to go to Iowa State, get copies of my diplomas, and I had to go to the state Capitol and get a copy of my birth certificate. And then all of that had to be certified by the Secretary of State in Iowa. And then I had to go to Topeka, to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, to get certification to prove that I was not a criminal. And that had to be certified by the Secretary of State in Topeka. So I had to gather those documents, and then I had to trek over to Chicago to the Chinese consulate and deliver those in person. They wouldn't let me mail them, so I had to deliver them in person. And then I had to go back to the consulate again for giving my fingerprints. So that was the final step. So those were some of the little legal things that I had to run around and do in order to be able to go. But that allowed me to get a work visa. So when I went to China, I was able to legally work. So that was important. And one other thing that I did was I took a continuing ed Chinese class through Johnson County Community College, but I took that in the fall of 2016, and I didn't go until the fall of 2017. So I literally forgot everything. The only thing I could remember was ni hao, which is hello, and xie xie, which is thank you. So it didn't help me very much. But when I was in China, all of the young people, young adults, college age and younger, have studied English. And so even though I didn't know how to speak Chinese, whenever I needed help or I had difficulties, there were always English speakers around. And many people were very generous and kind to just offer help if I looked confused. So that was really nice. So all that got me ready to go to China. And so in in August of 2017, I went to Xi'an. Um, and maybe you've heard of Xi'an. It's in the north central part of China. You can see Beijing's way up there north, and this is southwest of Beijing. It's actually about the same latitude as Kansas City. So it has 4 seasons. The temperatures were very similar. It's a little warmer, I think, in the winter and a little warmer in the summer than Kansas City, but it was very similar to the weather in Kansas City. And Xi'an has a really interesting history because it is the easternmost point of the Silk Road. And so it has a very international history because the Silk Road was there and there was a lot of trading done there internationally. So Xi'an is a city of about 14 million people. And this is a picture, there's a walking bridge there. I walked over that walking bridge almost daily from my apartment to this part of the old campus of NPU. And you see underneath the bridge is a blue structure. And everywhere there's building going on in all of the cities I was in. And this blue structure, they're creating a new subway line underground. So that's a multi-year project, but they're constantly building. Everywhere I was going was constant building. So that was kind of fun. But you may have heard of Xi'an because of the terracotta warriors and horses. They were commissioned by an emperor over 2,000 years ago. They were commissioned so that that emperor would be protected in his afterlife. And so they were buried and forgotten for 2,000 years. But in 1974, a farmer was digging in his land and he found a head of a sculpture, and he contacted some other people and they realized this is something amazing. So it's that previous picture, I guess you can see this big excavation area. This is just one part. There are thousands of soldiers and they're all very interesting. They're very detailed and they really are a testament to the artist's creativity and skill so long ago. They're just really amazing. And as you know, in China, there's a Great Wall, and you may or may not know that a lot of cities have city walls, and this is the city wall in Xi'an. It's in the background there, and then in the front is the moat. The city wall was originally built in the Ming Dynasty, which was 1,500 years ago. It actually was started before the Great Wall, and it was expanded and of course restored since then. And now it's just a beautiful wall that you can go on top of. And one of my favorite things was to ride a bike. You can rent bikes to ride around the perimeter. It's 14 kilometers around, which is like 8.7 miles. And so it's a really nice little trip to do. And the wall is really fascinating because on the outside of the wall is very modern building and skyscrapers. And then on the inside of the wall, sorry, wrong way. Inside of the wall is historical buildings. And this is the bell tower, which was in the center of the old city inside of the wall. There are modern buildings too, but they're not skyscrapers like outside of the wall. And this was one of my favorite places. Again, it's obviously outside, obviously at night with the lights, but I really enjoyed going whenever I went inside the city wall to go by the bell tower. It was really fun. So that's just a little bit about Xian. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the school, Northwestern Polytechnical University. The focus is engineering. And so almost everybody, all the students there are engineering students. And you see in this logo that there's a little airplane. Aerospace is a focus of the engineering. And on the old campus and on the new campus, there are airplanes in the middle of campus, which is kind of fun. Just stuck there to look at. But aerospace is a big part of it. And so, as I mentioned, there's an old campus and a new campus. The old campus is near the city wall. It's not right next to it. It's a pretty good walk to go to the city from the campus to the city wall, but it's doable. The new campus is about an hour's bus ride away. And when I was teaching, I taught 5 of my 6 classes at the new campus. So I would take the bus to the new campus, and this is where I would get off of the bus. This was my favorite bus stop. It went by this reflection pool, and you can see the sculptures there, and in the background you see the mountains. On the right side, that curved building with windows is the library, and it was a beautiful structure. So I enjoyed walking to class every morning, getting off the bus from this side of campus. This is a view from inside the library looking out, and again, you can see the mountains. That hut kind of building there on the right side is a coffee shop, which I went to a lot. I met students there also for some activities, and it was a hangout that I spent a lot of time at that coffee shop. This is a classroom building. I taught 4 of my 6 classes here. And so it's a very typical classroom building on the campus. So I hope that gives you a little feel of the new campus. So for my teaching, as I mentioned, I taught 6 classes every week. The first set of classes, I taught 2 sections of sophomore composition. All of these students were English majors. We had a textbook you see on the front of the desk there that I was given to use in class, but I was given a lot of freedom and leeway to do whatever I wanted in class. So while I had that textbook, I was not required to use all of it or even any of it. So I was very able to be flexible and creative in how I wanted to teach and my teaching style and what I thought the students needed. So I thought that was really fun. And these students were amazing. As I said, they're English majors. Most of the students had only studied English in China. A few of them had been outside of China, but most had studied English only in China, and their English was amazing. They were very proficient, and I loved reading their essays and their journals, writing about their feelings and different perspectives that were amazing, and they were very good at writing that. So I enjoyed those students a lot. So I had 2 sections of sophomore composition. And I had 2 sections of public speaking. These students were sophomores, juniors, and seniors. I had 1 English major, but the rest were all engineering students, and they all wanted to practice and improve their presentation skills in English. Many students do conferences and competitions outside of China, and so they use English, and this was an opportunity for these students to practice presentation skills. Again, if you see on the bottom right side, there is a red textbook. I was given a textbook, but again, I was given a lot of freedom to teach the presentation skills in whatever way I wanted to teach and what I thought was appropriate. So I appreciated that. And we had a lot of fun doing a lot of different kinds of presentations. And we also worked on some aspects of pronunciation. So that was my speaking class. And then I had 2 sections of a methods class. This was a class that I did not know I was going to teach before I arrived. A couple weeks after I was there, I was asked to teach a methods class. And again, very free. The only thing that I was told was it has to be about teaching methods, and that was it. So I was free to develop the curriculum whatever way I wanted to. All of the students were professors from different content areas across campus. Because NPU is an engineering school and a technology school, a lot of the textbooks actually are in English. And a lot of the professors teach some of their classes or all of their classes in English. So these were all professors who were wanting to learn some new and different approaches to teach in their classes. So as I said, I didn't know I was teaching it. And so I texted my husband and had him scan some pages from some methods textbooks I had in grad school. And I did a lot of Googling, finding information to create our curriculum for that class. We did things talking about active learning strategies, student-centered approaches. We talked about flipped classrooms. We talked about the Clifton Strengths Finder. We did a lot of different things. And then all of the students, all my teacher students, gave mini lessons from their content areas where they incorporated something they had never done before. And that was a lot of fun. So it was a good group. I think I mentioned, but I taught one class on the new campus, and then I taught one class on the old campus so that I could accommodate professors from both campuses. So that was a lot of fun as well. Um, so I was very busy when I was teaching. I had 6 classes. And then in addition, I spent 8 hours a week facilitating free talk with my composition and speaking students. And so I broke them up into small groups and we got together in the coffee shop. This is that coffee shop that I showed you outside of the library. And we would talk about anything in English. It was a more casual kind of conversation, not academic. And we talked about everything from childhood memories to what kind of cell phones they liked and why. And we played games. I taught them how to play hearts, and we played I Doubt It. We played different games and just a lot of casual English conversation. But that was 8 hours a week as well. And then I also participated in judging campus-wide debate. The debate was done in English. The students were students from all over the campus. On this stage here, there's one person who was an English major, but everybody else was from different engineering departments. And they went through several preliminary rounds, and then this was the final round of a debate. And so I got to be a part of the judging from the preliminary rounds. There were several until this final round. And again, I was really impressed by the English that these students were able to think on their feet and talk extemporaneously in deep and complex ideas. And so it was fun to be a part of that. I also got to uh, judge some student speeches in the English department. Uh, was I presented in the department for a staff seminar. I helped students who were preparing for contests. A lot of the students participate in international competitions in China and outside of China. And I got to help a speaking student as he was preparing his speech for the speech competition that he did. And there were writing competitions. My engineering students had math competitions and robotics competitions. So they were always doing a lot of different kinds of competitions. But I got to help with that. I also got to help with recording a final English test for non-natives or non-English majors. So I lent my native English voice to these tests that were recorded for students. So that was kind of fun. So I was busy. I did a lot. I didn't have a lot of free time when I was teaching, but I would say that I was even less busy than all of my teacher friends. They were very busy. At the university, there is a lot expected of teachers. And so they are very busy doing their coursework and everything outside of their coursework as well. So that was my experience teaching at a university. Then in 2019, I had the opportunity to go with a group of K-12 students, or sorry, K-12 teachers from the Kansas City area to work with an English agency that taught English for students K-12. Uh, in elementary students would do an English camp, and high school students were preparing to go to the United States to study abroad. So that was a different kind of experience. But again, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Taiyuan, because maybe you've never heard of Taiyuan. Um, Taiyuan is in north central or northeast China as well. It's north of Xian. It's still southwest of Beijing. And it was a little cooler there. I was in the summer, I was there in the summer, and the weather was beautiful. It was just a really beautiful place to be. Taiyuan is a city of about 4 million, so smaller than Xi'an, but still a very big city. And again, lots of building going on all around the city. I'll tell you a few of my favorite places in Taiyuan. One is, this is the Fun River, which went through Taiyuan. And if in the distance, you can see there are some cranes and some buildings. They're building apartments, again, just building. But the Fun River was very beautiful. There was a park on both sides of the river, and it was just a beautiful, peaceful place to go and to relax and just enjoy beauty. It was very pretty. Uh, Taiyuan is located in Shanxi province, and Shanxi province is known for noodles. And so all different kinds of noodles that they had. This cook has a big dough ball, a big dough thing of noodle dough, and he was shaving off the dough into the vat, making the noodles, and those were really good. And then one of my favorite noodles was this one. It's a very long noodle. In my bowl and on my chopsticks, that's all just one noodle. It was really long, but it was really fun, and it tasted really good too. And then Shanxi province is also known for vinegar. Just like on American tables, we have salt and pepper shakers. On tables in Shanxi province, there are bottles of vinegar. And it's a really strong, dark kind of vinegar made from all different kinds of things, from rice and barley to dates. And some people drink vinegar for health benefits, otherwise it's used as a flavoring. I really liked dipping my dumplings in vinegar. It was a good way to eat them. So that's a little bit about Taiyuan. As I mentioned, I went with a group of K-12 teachers from the Kansas City area, and we worked for an agency. An agency there, an English agency, is a place for students to work on English. They can have private tutoring, they can have group tutoring, they can do online tutoring, face-to-face tutoring, and then English camps for young kids. So a lot of different kinds of English activities. But the agency also is a place where students or parents of students who want to send their children to the United States to study can go through an agency. And when they go through this agency, students typically leave China when they're 15 years old, and they go to a high school. And the agency has relationships with private high schools all over the United States. And the students go for their freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior years of high school. So it's a big commitment. And then they generally go to an American university, and then often will go back to China to work. I think the students and the parents are hoping that having all of that English will make them more marketable someday when they want to enter the job market. So there are English agencies all over that have these kinds of relationships with students. So my teaching, as I mentioned, the group went, and the elementary teachers did an English camp for elementary students, but I taught high school and middle school students. And I had just 2 high school students I taught in the afternoons. And both of these girls were getting ready to go to the US. One is in Pennsylvania, and one is in Nebraska. So they were brushing up on English and getting ready to adjust to American culture. So again, I was totally given freedom to create whatever curriculum I wanted. And I wanted these students to experience typical kinds of activities that they would experience in a classroom. So we did a lot of different kinds of activities that I thought they would experience in a high school classroom. And we also worked on reading and writing and speaking. So that was a lot of fun. And then, so I taught them in the afternoons for the whole 15 days I was there. for about 5 days, I taught some middle school students who just wanted extra work and extra help in English. They were very good students. And so we also did reading and writing and speaking. And again, I was given complete freedom on how to create a curriculum. So it was fun to be able to be creative and do it the way I wanted to do it. Again, I was very busy. Teaching 15 days sounds like 3 weeks, but it wasn't broken up like Monday through Friday and weekends off. I started actually on a Sunday and taught 6 days straight, and then I got 2 days off, and then I taught 6 more days and got 1 day off, and then I taught 3 days to finish it up. So it was kind of a different kind of schedule, but it was 15 days altogether. So that was a different kind of experience to teach through an agency and in small groups than it was teaching at the university, but both experiences were really fun, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to do those experiences. So what did I learn? I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways is that I can understand how my students feel. I can stand in their shoes and walk in their shoes. As I mentioned, I teach English to non-native speakers in JCCC, and all of my students come from other countries, and they're all foreigners here when they come to the US. And so I got a chance to be a foreigner in China and not blend in everywhere that I went. And I also got to experience the frustrations of knowing how to do something, daily activities that were just so much harder because they were just so different. And I know my students do that here. You know, we easily just say, oh, log into the internet, oh, make a copy. That's just easy for us, but it's different from maybe the way my students have done it in their home countries. And so I got to be in their shoes and experience those daily differences. And I'll just tell you one little story. Um, this is a copy shop, and this was on the old campus, and I went across that walking bridge that I told you about. It was about a mile away from my apartment whenever I wanted to make copies. So that was different. I'm in my office and I just make copies that are just around the corner. But here I had to plan ahead and walk to the copy shop, and then I went to the copy shop, and this was one of the few places I went where the copy shop owners did not speak much English. So it was a humbling experience. A teacher friend of mine told me, just go stand in there, hold up my flash drive, and someone will help me. And that was very humbling. And again, it was good to be in my students' shoes that way. I could explain things, I could do things, but only in English. And to be humbled to just stand there holding up my flash drive was a different experience. And but it's good to know that kind of feeling. I think it helps me understand my students as well. And so this was a picture that represented some of my biggest frustrations, going to get copies made, that I had complex ideas on how I wanted copies made. That was very hard to communicate. But then some of my biggest successes, because after a while I finally learned I had to say some of these things in Chinese. I had to learn all my numbers so that I could tell them how many copies I wanted. So some days it was a really successful experience, and it made me excited that I could get the number of copies and the copies done the way I wanted to. So that was fun. But it also made me want to learn Chinese. I could get along well in English, but it really made me think I'd like to learn Chinese. So in subsequent years, since 2017, NPU has sent professors here. And so I've gotten a chance to learn a little bit of Chinese from them. But because of COVID, we don't have any visiting professors this year. So I enrolled in JCCC's beginning Chinese class last fall and this spring. And so I've been learning more Chinese, which is really fun. So I hope when I go back, I can speak a little more. Um, the other takeaway is just that we we have a common bond as people, whether we speak Chinese or English, whether we grew up in China or in the United States. We have this common bond, and we all have hopes and dreams. We have hopes for our children. We want to work hard and accomplish goals. We just have all this that is in common, and I really enjoyed that reinforcement, interacting with Chinese people and seeing our common bond that we have. So that was very fun. So excuse me, I hope I've given you a little taste of teaching in China through the experience at a university and then through an agency. So I want to say 谢谢, which is thank you for listening. And then I'd like to open it up for any questions you might have.
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you so much. That experience sounds amazing. Like I definitely didn't know about the Xian Yang, or that the terracotta warriors were from there. So thank
Ah,
you so much for sharing that.
sure.
I would like to open the floor for any questions. Danielle.
Yeah, and if you guys don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself and asking them, you can also type them in the chat box, or in me or Camila will read them off for you. So
Yeah, I guess to start off with the conversation, I do have a question because you mentioned that you had a lot of freedom within the curriculum that
Mhm.
you were performing. How much experience do you think a new applicant would need to teach in China?
That's a good question. I think for the kind of teaching that I did, I think it would be very daunting for someone who didn't ever teach English before. There are programs, I had some friends, some American friends who taught at different universities. There were programs for non-English majors that were more rigorous and are more controlled. And so there are programs that are for teachers who maybe don't have a lot of teaching experience. It kind of depends on where you are. Um, yeah, both I had it, both teaching experiences. If I did those without any experience, I think it would have been really hard. But there are other programs, and there are other different universities have different kinds of programs that are more structured. I guess that's the word, structured.
Mm.
and it looks like we have a question in the chat from Paula. To work in an agency to teach English, do you have to have a degree in English? Also, could a school counselor be able to get a short-term job there?
Yeah, I think I'm not an expert in all agencies, but I do know that in several, I have some friends who teach in some agencies. Blanking on the name, there's one that's really well known that I think all you have to have is a college degree. You don't have to have a degree necessarily in English. Those kinds of jobs are often online tutoring. So because of the time change, you would do it online overnight here in the US because that would be the daytime in China. But also you can go, there are just lots and lots and lots of agencies. While I was there, I was approached by several people to asking me to work for them, which I couldn't do because I had a contract with NPU. So I was not allowed to do any extra work, which was fine because, like I said, I was very busy. But there were a lot of organizations that wanted native speakers of English just to talk with kids. I have friends there whose like 4-year-old kids are taking English. And so they just need someone who can talk about basic English and vocabulary, colors and numbers, and say it with a native English accent. A lot of people really like the American accent, but there are British accent, Australian accent. I had a Dutch friend who has a Dutch accent on his English, but he was also teaching there. So it doesn't matter what your accent is.
Oh. And I do have a question before we move into another question here in the chat. You mentioned that you wanted to learn Chinese. Were there any opportunities offered to you to like courses in Chinese, or did any sort of a door opened with wanting to
Um,
learn China?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, my daughter went. She was as a study abroad student, and she was taking Chinese classes. And her classes unfortunately conflicted with my classes, so I couldn't take them at the same time. There, they had the School of Foreign Studies was going to offer a Chinese class for other foreign teachers, but it just didn't happen this semester I was there. But they have done that in the past. Just the semester I was there, we weren't able to do that. So, yeah.
It looks like we have a question in the chat from Evan. Were there any other countries other than China that you considered teaching abroad in? And then he also had another question. Additionally, what initially drew you to teaching in China?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by all countries. I have traveled a lot. I have been, I've been in other countries for like 2 months at a time for traveling, but not for teaching. Um, and I would teach anywhere, but like I said, because JCCC has this wonderful partnership with NPU, it was just a really natural place to go. And so that's why. And being drawn to China, I, I just said I've like I said I've traveled in South America. I've traveled. I went with a friend and we backpacked around Europe. I've been in Asia. I've been in the Philippines and Japan and China, and so um, any country is good. But I did really enjoy China. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. I think it does address it. Going off that, like, how much international experience would you recommend anybody that's thinking about teaching abroad? Because you mentioned that you have traveled before for long periods of time, like 2 months. It's a substantial amount of time. Would you recommend having perhaps like a semester abroad experience or some sort of service abroad before taking the decision to teach abroad, or?
That's an interesting question. I think going to another country, however you go, is a great experience. And I think, culture shock is a thing. And I think if you're aware that there will be times when everything is really hard and you might want to give up, that's normal. So I don't think teaching requires you to have traveled before. Um, just know, anytime you've traveled if you go for a week, I don't know that you experience culture shock, but um, if you go for an extended period of time where you're daily living in the culture, you're going to experience challenges. And I think you just live through it. I'm not really sure how you can prepare for it. I don't think necessarily you have to be prepared, because I have traveled a lot and I have lived in other countries and done things, and I still experienced that level of culture shock, adjustment, frustration here, because again, everything was different. So I'm not sure that teaching overseas would require any overseas experience, just a willingness to try, to be willing to make mistakes and recover and not let them totally beat you down. I think that would be important.
That's a great advice.
Uh, uh, there's,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, it looked like we have another question in the chat. Um, from Abby. She's thinking about teaching English in South Korea, and is curious if there was anything that surprised you about working in a culture like China, or no,
Uh-huh.
the working culture in China, or any learning curve with the working environment.
I think what surprised me, I mentioned, is how hard people work in China. And I think South Korea is similar in that way. Um, that copy shop I showed you was open 7 days a week. It was owned by a couple. So either the husband or the wife was there 7 days a week. Sometimes they both were there 7 days a week. That was here, we wouldn't do that. It would close for at least one day, but they were open 7 days a week. And so the working culture there is everybody works really hard. And all of my colleagues there, they were like when we were doing those, judging those debate rounds, we were on campus till 9 p.m. at night. And that was just expected. It wasn't something unusual. It's just teachers were expected to do that. And so I think China in particular, because that's where I taught, is a very hardworking culture. People work very hard all the time. So maybe that would surprise you. I think we work hard in the U.S. I think I work hard, but we also get days off, and that may not be the case in
Right.
other countries.
That's so interesting because I've come from Latin America and I
Mm.
live in the United States, but I didn't know about the working culture there. So thank you for sharing that.
Uh-huh.
Another question that Joe has is there an upper age limit for the possibility of teaching in China?
I think it depends on who you teach with, who you go with to teach. I'm 54, so I'm a little older. When I went in 2017, the university was looking for people under 55, I think, at that time. And I thought, oh, I'm getting close to the limit. But when I was there are schools and universities and even NPU who hired native speakers who were from older age groups than me. So I don't think there's that upper limit. It's just how much energy you can have. You know, as I get older, I get a little tireder maybe, but it depends on, I think, the organization. But I knew people in their 70s who were teaching English at NPU actually, and they were Americans who were there for a 1 year teaching abroad experience. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's very interesting. Another question that Danielle had, she had to leave, but she left me a
Mm.
question here.
Ah,
And she asked, what skills or talents do you think you're acquired while working abroad, but specifically in China?
ah. Um, I think flexibility, I mentioned that. You just have to put aside, and you coming from South America, what country did you come from originally?
Colombia.
Oh, Colombia. You just know that things are going to be different. And I think if you go expecting it to be like the United States, you're going to struggle a lot. I think it's important to go and say, hey, I do it this way, but that doesn't mean it's the only way to do it, or that is even the right way to do it. I may do it differently, and that's okay. I think flexibility is really important, and humility, because, like I said, you make mistakes and you do dumb things and you look stupid sometimes, and you just have to say, that's it, that's what I do, and not get worried about it, but just keep trying and don't give up. I think that's important as well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a real skill that we all need to work
Mm.
on a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Evan asks, have you heard from anyone about how the pandemic has affected teaching abroad?
Mhm. Well, I do keep in touch with my friends back at NPU, and they are back in school just like we are, with masks and distancing. Although last year in March, they also shut down like we did and had to go home and do everything online. So in Xian, anyway, it's very similar to what it has been here. In Taiwan, I know that they've just continued all their online learning just like they did before. So they still do that, which is the majority of the way they do teaching in Taiwan. Of course, nobody was able to go this past summer, and I had wanted to go to Xi'an this fall, but it's not going to work out. So maybe next year.
Yeah, hopefully next year.
Yeah.
One last question before we start going towards the closing or the end. Um, what was your experience like transitioning from your family in the United States, like having a family here and then having to move? How was that experience?
Um, well, like I said, I had the privilege of going with my youngest daughter, which was so amazing. It was a blessing. And so I had a family member with me. I wasn't by myself, so that helped. But you know, technology is amazing. We use the WeChat app, and sometimes internet wasn't working very well in my apartment. So we often went to Starbucks on a Saturday morning and did WeChat video calls to my husband and my other kids back here. And so, you know, that kept in contact. And I think technology really helps. I think, 20 years ago when you couldn't do that, that would have been harder. But, to see their faces and be able to talk like they're just almost right across from you, that was a really wonderful thing. So I think that helped.
Oh, that's good. And how about the living situation? Was it something that the organization helped you to figure out,
Mhm,
like the university and then the
mhm.
uh,
The agency.
agency?
Yeah, the university provided me an apartment, and it was close, like I said, to the old campus, and so, but it also gave me autonomy. I could live on my own. I didn't have to live with other people. It was my own apartment. My daughter lived with me, but it was my own apartment, so that was nice. It was all provided for from the university. And when I went in Taiwan, I also had an apartment I shared with another American teacher, so we were roommates. But they provided the living place, and so that was good. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That you don't have to go through the process of it just alone. That's
That would have been, yeah, hard too. Yeah, I didn't have to
yeah.
worry about that.
Um, I want to ask, does anybody else has any more questions or want to? know a little bit more. Um, well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an amazing experience
You're
for
very
me
welcome.
to hear you talking about your travels and you teaching abroad, and really inspiring on a personal note.
Oh,
So I thank you.
thank you.
And for everyone else, we like to thank you for your participation and for your continued support of the IRC. I like to close by putting a plug in for some of our upcoming events or programs. In particular, next Wednesday, we're going to have a lexicon over Latvian, and next Friday, we're going to have another international career series over international architecture. So if you're interested, please feel free to go to the IRC website and register for those events. Um, Thank you so much for being here again, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Please stay well, and we hope to see you all soon.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks.